10 years in, I've successfully outlasted 2 bosses thanks to my exceptional slacking skills. The Empress was replaced twice, 3 selection rounds were held, and the concubines who entered with me were either deposed or driven mad. Yet I remained firmly in my position. Whenever they mention me, they fall into a deep silence, saying I am the true champion of office politics. Now that I've become the Empress Dowager, how can the new concubines stay securely in their seats? Do you like garlic? Back in the prince's residence, the emperor, who was the crown prince then, treated me very differently. Everyone said it was because the prince was tired of rich delicacies and wanted something plain. I was speechless. Those scholars really know how to insult people without using a single dirty word. The primary wife was a noblewoman from a prestigious family, while the secondary wife was a childhood sweetheart. The secondary was beautiful, the primary was clever. Among us 1 wife and 2 concubines, only I was ordinary. I didn't come from a high status, and I wasn't pretty. In the prince's residence, I was basically a non-entity. Yet this non-entity, was the one most favored by the prince. People say that the only place more dangerous than the imperial palace is the eastern palace, and nothing is harder to be than the crown prince. The prince's life wasn't easy, and the turmoil in his private quarters was even worse. The secondary wife's family status was equal to the primary wife's family. The 2 of them turned the inner courtyard upside down, with a favored one on one side and a noble wife on the other. He couldn't afford to offend either. That's why the prince often sought refuge in my room to vent. He loved complaining to me about the secondary wife's unreasonable tantrums and the primary wife's overbearing nature. I would obediently serve him tea and snacks, listening while he spoke, occasionally chiming in with a word or 2. Your Highness, you really are worked to the bone. Being a crown prince is exhausting. How would the Eastern Palace even function without you? The crown prince instantly teared up, convinced I was the only one who truly understood him. While I ate, I took out a handkerchief to wipe his tears, feeling quite contemptuous inside. He's a grown man, yet he cries. But out loud, I said, Your Highness, please don't cry. It breaks my heart. See, that's the art of communication, learned from my father. After the crown prince finished crying, he calmed down. He glanced at me while I was still snacking, no longer angry, and finally said,
Forget it, let's have some food.
What's the meaning of this? We were talking about others, so why bring me into it? I don't understand the palace's hidden intrigues, but whenever I see the emperor torn between 2 people, I just think he's a bit too soft. He really should ask my father for advice. He could juggle 8 concubines with ease, and my mother would even feel sorry for how hard he worked. The reason the emperor spoils me has another cause. He has an embarrassing little hobby. When he's stressed, he loves to go to the kitchen to whip up some food. He used to sneak in late at night, cook, and then throw it all away. After I came along, his hobby finally found a soulmate. I love to eat and drink, and I make everything look delicious. He would tear up with excitement, whispering to himself, a kindred spirit found at last. In truth, I'm just not picky. That's how I became the most unique presence in his inner court. It's been 10 years since I entered the palace, and I've already become an elder of the harem. How old am I? The capital has changed rulers 3 times. Honestly, my big, chubby son is already 12. New favorites in the inner court come and go like waves, and the positions of the 4 consorts have changed many times, yet I always remain at the very end of the list. At first, others were wary of me, saying I was too calculating. But as I got older, they started excluding me from their schemes, saying they wouldn't play with an old hag. Nonsense. I'm only 28. I haven't even had my 30th birthday yet. This made me cry in anger. The emperor rarely saw me in tears, so he quickly asked why. I was annoyed. They won't include me in their schemes. They say they won't play with an old hag. No way. I want to step up. I want to scheme. The emperor was at a loss and started to coax me.
Forget it. Forget it. Palace intrigue takes so much brainpower. With your peanut-sized head, what could you possibly figure out? Quote.
I'm upset, but I'm an old lady. Who said that? I'll go tear their mouths apart today. Quote, the emperor's mouth is full of sweet lies. He's willing to coax me, and I'm willing to listen, but I know clearly that he's just here to bring in new concubines for the palace. Does he really have time for me? When I asked him, he finally got to the point. It turned out my brat had offended his new favorite, and he came to lecture me. He rubbed his nose in embarrassment, seemingly recalling his words about wanting to help me vent my frustration earlier. I shouted, your son made the mistake. Why are you blaming me? The emperor looked a bit awkward. Look at how Yunqing has been raised these past few years. Speaking of this, I get a headache. Yunqing isn't just my flesh and blood, and besides, I'm just a woman in the inner chambers. What do I know about educating a child? As long as I keep him fed and looked after, isn't that enough? The emperor seemed stunned by my twisted logic. He pondered it and apparently thought it made sense. After all, what could a mere woman really teach a child? Thus, he began to reflect on himself. These past few years, his focus had been on the imperial court, not on his child. If the raising isn't done by the father, it's the father's fault. He realized he was an unqualified dad, so the emperor, who originally came to reprimand me, left in a hurry. The maids nearby were terrified. I leaned against the table, dazed. My head maid, Kuie, looked at me with expectation, hoping I would offer a grand plan. I just said, no matter what happens, we still need to eat well tonight. The light in Kui's eyes died instantly. She rolled her eyes at me and turned to leave. The emperor, thinking it over, seemed to agree with what I said about not raising the child well. He started educating Yunqing himself, even taking him along to secret meetings with ministers in the study. Later, when Yuanxing missed dinner to come eat with me, I started to lose it. He isn't going to be the emperor, so why is he being kept so busy every day? He's just a little kid. Being well fed and rested is the only serious business he needs to tend to. The emperor actually accepted this and backed down.
Then I will have him return to the palace earlier tomorrow.
The new palace maid was so shocked she couldn't speak, and she stammered. The prince. This really depends on you. Me? What? What nonsense is that? After little Yuanxing was kept by the emperor to be raised personally, the court collapsed. He called me into his chambers, convinced I was deeply scheming, using the guise of being foolish to make the emperor do the parenting. He stared at me with deep, meaningful eyes. I really underestimated you. Everyone else is still playing palace intrigue, while you've already started playing for power. Quote, I had stayed up all night writing a novel and was dozing off when I was suddenly shoved. I looked up, confused, asking if it was time to eat. He completely lost his composure. Eat, eat. All you know is eating. Your son spends all day leading my nephew around, either roasting lamb legs or climbing trees. Can you have some higher aspirations? Quote, he's blaming our mother-son duo now. I don't get his heart, but can't I at least raise a horse? Although Yuanxing is the emperor's eldest son, he has never been favored by his father since he was small. I am dull and inexperienced in how to raise a prince. Why not leave Yuanxing by your side? The empress fell silent. He likely flared up today with this very intention. However, since the emperor already permitted me to raise the child myself, he couldn't easily intervene. I began to sigh. Yuanxing was placed with Empress Shengyuan the moment he was born. Later, when she became pregnant, she ignored him. By the time he reached me, he was already 3, and had no bond with me, his biological mother. After Empress Shengyuan passed away, he was placed with Empress Rongyan, but she died not long after. Only then did he end up in my hands. I truly had no experience raising children, so I let him fend for himself. Upon hearing this, the empress revealed a strange look. Who in the palace doesn't know that whichever empress takes in the first prince meets with misfortune? It's said the boy has a knack for bringing doom to his adoptive mothers. Wishing to live a few more years, the empress immediately extinguished the thought of taking him in. She said there would be plenty of chances for children later. Seeing her remain silent, I cautiously asked with a smile, does your invitation for tea and a meal still stand, Your Majesty? Get out. You really have no sense of the situation, do you? I lament that this empress is unlike any before. She is quite something. When Yuanxing was born, the first empress was overjoyed and took him in as her own. At the time, the emperor had not yet ascended, and Yuanxing was his firstborn, so he cared for him. However, Empress Shengyuan never loved Yuanxing. She only wanted to secure her position, so she hurriedly adopted him. Later, when he fell ill with a fever, no one looked after him, and it was only when the emperor visited that he noticed. The emperor was furious, harboring resentment toward his dignified wife for the first time. Shortly after, Empress Shengyuan miscarried, fell ill, and never recovered. Later, the emperor ascended the throne, and Empress Ruan succeeded her. My son was raised by her, but she was petty and, jealous of the emperor's favor for noble consort Qingmei, targeted my son, eventually causing the noble consort to miscarry. The emperor flew into a rage and deposed the empress. My son, the emperor's only child, was passed between several mothers. To make me eligible to raise the first prince, the emperor promoted me to consort Liang, which was somewhat an attempt to make amends. When Yuanxing finally returned to me, he was frail and thin. I held him and wept bitterly, yet the child comforted me. Mother, I said I would return to your side. Fortunately, while I have no other skills, I am quite a connoisseur of food. Within half a year, I had nurtured him into a lively, happy little fatty. Perhaps due to the years of uncertainty, he is exceptionally good at reading the room. My current standing is all thanks to my son's thoughtful guidance, such as how to please the emperor. Today, the little fatty finished his lessons and excitedly walked over to me. Mother, we had archery class today. I hunted a rabbit. Let's roast it and eat it later. I was overjoyed. Rabbit meat is wonderful. It has been so long since I last had some. Let's make a gesture later and set aside a small piece for Father Emperor to curry some favor with him. Fine, all is well. I will do as you say. Yuanxing and I began our attempt at cooking, but our techniques were clumsy. Smoke filled the air, and before the fire was even lit, we had summoned the imperial guards. Seeing them rush in with buckets of water, I was dumbfounded. What kind of mess was this? That night, the empress summoned me to her palace to kneel. When I heard she intended to have the servants strike my palms, Yuanxing immediately began to wail, kicked his little legs, and ran out. I knew he had gone to fetch help. No sooner had the first strike landed than the emperor arrived in a towering rage. It's a trivial matter. A reprimand would have sufficed. Saying this, he grabbed my hand and looked at it with heartache.
Empress, you've gone too far.
As I mentioned, the emperor has always felt guilty toward me. Seeing my plump fingers swollen, his expression darkened. Faced with his accusation, the empress was speechless. He had no guile and spoke his mind directly. Your Majesty, he almost set the palace on fire, and you're still shielding him?
Empress, this is where you are wrong. My son acted out of filial piety, just wanting to roast a hare for me to taste. You made such a fuss and punished his mother. Instead of blaming her, you should blame me. It is I who failed to teach Yuanxing well.
I glanced at Yuanxing hiding behind the emperor, and he winked at me. When it comes to flattery, I inherited my father's true talent. Later, as the emperor carried me on his back and Yuanxing held his robes, our shadows stretched long in the sunset, like 3 twists of dough. Thinking of the crispy fried dough I had recently, I couldn't help but swallow, while Yuanxing kept nagging. Father, that was the first hair I ever caught. It's a pity you didn't get to taste it. That, father, made the 30-year-old man shudder, his eyes brimming with tears.
My good son, tomorrow I'll take you out to catch a bigger one.
Watching this touching scene, I couldn't help but sigh. I still have much to learn about handling the Emperor. His feelings for me are complex. He simply thinks it's hard for me to survive among so many people, which led to pity, and in turn, more indulgence toward me and Yunxing. He often says two things.
Li Yongfei is just a big gluttonous. What could she possibly do wrong? Yunxing is just a bit mischievous. All little children are like this. Everyone should just bear with it.
People used to say the Emperor doted on us too much, viewing us as a thorn in their side. A few years ago, when a concubine had a miscarriage and framed me for harming the prince, the Emperor didn't even go through the formalities. He had her expelled immediately, laughing.
You could have framed anyone, but you had to frame her?
The Emperor has blind faith in my intelligence. I held the snack and nodded along. That's right, I've been eating snacks in the study these days and haven't run into you. Gradually, others stopped involving me in their schemes, because while the Emperor turns a blind eye to them targeting others, he flips the table if they target me. You've spoiled me so much that this little kitten would be terrified of backstabbing. As time went on, everyone realized that the Emperor's favoritism toward us was because he never intended to groom Yunxing as the crown prince. I, a useless glutton with no maternal family backing, posed no threat to the throne. He gave me a hard time a few times, but perhaps finding it futile, he simply chased me away and told me not to loiter in his sight when I had nothing better to do. I heard him tell his confidants, Concubine Wu is just a simpleton, Momo, you're overthinking it. I echoed in my heart, who's to say otherwise? There are countless ways to survive, but I only clung to one. Inaction is the ultimate defense. The day Imperial Consort Yu passed away, I was in my room eating pastries brought by a new maid. When I heard the news, I was stunned for a moment, and in a fit of impulse, I shouted, how is that possible? That's Imperial Consort Yu. Quote, Imperial Consort Yu was the Emperor's childhood sweetheart. I, more than anyone, knew her weight in the Emperor's heart. This consort, favorite since the days of the Eastern Palace, had beauty, status, and ability. Single-handedly, she took down 2 successive empresses and used her iron-fisted tactics to keep the harem in check. The inner court truly trembled at the mere mention of her name. The imperial decree for her funeral was issued early in the morning, and by noon, I heard she wanted to see me. When I arrived, she was sitting in the courtyard playing chess. With her heavy makeup removed, the beautiful goddess showed wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She watched me sit and sighed. Sometimes I truly envy you. You're actually a year older than me, yet you look so much younger. Quote, I didn't respond. This consort had always looked down on me, and I had no idea what kind of mood she was in today to be engaging with me. She pushed a cup of tea in front of me. I have never made things difficult for you. I even helped you when you were giving birth. Shu, I want to ask you for one thing. After I'm gone, could you help me take good care of my Joshu? Joshu was her daughter born last year, whom the Emperor loved dearly. I bit my lip, feeling trouble. I wanted to say that a consort committing suicide is a grave crime that implicates the whole family. I wanted to say that the Emperor still cared for her, but looking at the once arrogant and indomitable Yu, now with vacant eyes and not a shred of spirit left, I knew that anything I said would be in vain. I tried to decline, but I'm not good at raising children. She smiled, yet a tear rolled down the corner of her eye, instantly blooming into a damp flower on the stone table. Just raise her the same way you raised Yunxing. I think Yunxing is doing just fine. Yuntian fears nothing, not even the imperial noble consort's rages, yet he still loves to bring her treats. I could only sigh and agree. The noble consort is clever. Since she wants me to bring him along, she must have prepared everything, waiting for me to walk away to see a fresh chessboard. He speaks of love, yet he allowed that person to kill my first child. He claims I am in his heart, yet he never dared to grant me the title of Empress. He nurtured my ambitions while suppressing my family, indulging me as I harmed 2 empresses, all while waiting for the perfect moment to wipe us out entirely. Do you think he ever truly loved me? I tensed my body, forcing myself not to look back. I think I finally understood that sentence the Emperor whispered while sleeping beside me. An emperor has no true heart. Now I believe it. The noble consort, who thrived for years, died that dark night from a cup of poisoned wine. Everyone thought the Emperor had sent it, but I knew it was his own doing. Bringing down the noble consort didn't bring the Empress much joy, and the entire inner court became lifeless. From that day on, the Emperor never returned. I heard he fell ill, but forbade any concubines from visiting. I obediently carried Joshu to plead with the Empress. Seeing me insist on adopting him, she laughed mockingly, asking if I knew his mother had been completely cast aside by the Emperor, with no backing left and no hope of rising again. Yet I dared to adopt him. I simply held the baby and pleaded before the cold palace steps. The child is innocent. Back then, I was the same, holding Yunxing and begging the emperor to grant me a way to survive. That day, it was the noble consort who spoke up for me, saying only a mother can raise her own child well. Because of those words, the emperor promoted me, a low-ranking concubine, to consort. The empress didn't agree, wanting me to tell the emperor myself. Without a word, I took the noble consort's child away. A few days later, the emperor appeared before me with a cold face, asking if he had indulged me too much. I knew this definitely struck a nerve. His existence